In this video, we will see the process to set up FQA Code Defaults. We will start with the trigger for this process, the data we need to know before we run it, the process we will look at in the idea screens. We will talk about the output of the process and also other processes that depend on it and exceptions. Regarding the trigger, usually we want to set up FQA Code Defaults when the business has identified that we are using FQAs recurrently while coding invoices, credit memos, or other transactions in the AP module. So for example, we might always have an FQA that is being used a lot for G&A, say for travel, and instead of us having to enter that FQA every single time, we may want to use a code for that instead, and it's going to make the process faster. Regarding the data we need to know, we have to know the FQA that is recurrent for us to define the code and map it to that FQA. And we also need to know on what entity we're going to be using this code. The process is to go to the AP module, then to utilities, and then to entity maintenance. Once there, we need to provide the company code. We will then go to the FQA Code Defaults tab, create the new code, and assign the FQA. And at that point, we will save the changes. Let's look at the process in the idea screen. So here we are in the AP module. We go to Utilities, Entity Maintenance. We enter the company code. Then we go to this tab, FQA Code Defaults, and we're going to create a new code and say it's going to be Travel. Our code is called Travel. Let's say this is the FQA we're going to use as an example. That account doesn't exist. You can search for it also, but I'm typing it in. And to make this quick, I'm just going to leave these other elements with the null element. But you could check, select specific AFE, department, PM, and so on and so forth, depending on the database setup that you have. The FQA string is going to be different. At that point, we save, and we have the code is now available for use. Okay, so now that our code is available for use in the invoice entry non-stock line screen, we can look at the dependency of this process to this code. So let's see what happens now with this code. How can we use this code when we're coding the invoices? So we go to transactions and invoice entry, and we are going to enter an invoice, say for travel. And we're going to use just any vendor here. We're entering the invoice information as is required generally. This is a header information. And now when I go to non-stock line, when I go to this account field here, I can go ahead and enter my code travel. And then if I go back and tab again, the FQA, the other elements of the FQA are populated as soon as I enter the code and tab out. And then after I enter the code for the account to be updated, I need to go back and tab out of that as well. And now we have the FQA that was brought in. So instead of me having to memorize an FQA or have to think about it, I know that every time I'm going to do travel under this entity, instead of using going in and specifying each FQA element, I can simply type in travel and the FQA is populated. In the case when you have an intercompany setup, so where one entity is in the header and another entity is in the detail, you can't go straight to enter the account code here, the FQA code yet. You first provide the entity and then you go ahead and type it in. Okay, so that's the only difference when you have intercompany set up for entities in combination. So here I didn't have to do that because the entity field is provided automatically because this entity is not set up to do intercompany. And the rest is as usual. If we talk about exceptions, this only works for NR invoices. So what are NR invoices? NR invoices are invoices that we enter without associating a purchase document. So usually if you don't have the purchase documents module, you will always enter invoices as NR. Why is that? That's because for invoices that are associated to purchase documents, the FQA is brought in from the purchase document, and then you can change it in the invoice entry screen if required, but that grid is controlled by however many lines were set in the purchase document. This quick code, this FQA code default, can be used only when that is not the case, and that happens when you are using the NR, where you're coding to NR invoices. Thank you for viewing this video guide on setting up FQA code defaults.